Every year on the 9th of May, Russia stages the most important political performance in its calendar, Victory Day. The commemoration of the Soviet Union's defeat of Nazi Germany in the Second World War is not simply a parade. It is the foundational event through which Russia projects the idea of itself to the world, and more importantly, to its own people. Tanks rolling through Red Square, ballistic missiles on their carriers, nuclear-capable, rolling past the Kremlin walls. Tens of thousands of soldiers in perfect formation. World leaders in the viewing stands. The president of the Russian Federation standing before it all, projecting the image of a state at the peak of its strength. For 80 years, this event has served as Russia's annual proof that it remains a great power. In 2026, something entirely different is happening. On the morning of May 4th, a Ukrainian drone struck the Mosfilm Tower, a luxury high-rise apartment building in western Moscow, in one of the deepest penetrations into the Russian capital since the war began. On the night of May 7th, Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin confirmed on Telegram that 30 or more drones had been shot down approaching the city in a single night. On the night of May 8th, the eve of the parade itself, Sobyanin reported that Ukraine launched dozens of drones at Moscow overnight, with 26 drones downed over the capital before dawn. Russia responded to all of this by deploying an additional 4 regiments, 24 battalions, and 162 air defense batteries around Moscow, stripping those assets from other parts of the country, according to a direct statement from Ukrainian Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky. And the parade itself? For the first time since 2007, there will be no tanks, no armored fighting vehicles, no nuclear-capable missile carriers. International journalists have been banned from attending. Mobile internet has been shut down across Moscow and St. Petersburg. And Ukraine's own Foreign Intelligence Service described the state of Moscow's preparations as happening in a mode, in their words, more similar to a military lockdown than a celebration. This is the Victory Day parade of a country that is not winning its war. Welcome to Global Faultlines, where we track the forces shaping the world beneath the surface of daily events. Today's analysis examines what is happening in Moscow not as a series of isolated news items, but as a coherent strategic picture, one that reveals the compounding pressures on the Putin regime, the growing confidence of Ukraine, and what this parade, stripped of its tanks and its foreign press, actually tells us about the direction of this conflict. The details here are more significant than most coverage has conveyed. Let us start with the physical facts on the ground, because the verified data from the days leading into May 9th tells a story that no amount of Kremlin messaging can fully contain. On May 4th, a Ukrainian drone struck the Mosfilm Tower in Moscow's Rumenki district, one of the city's most expensive residential areas, located approximately 6 kilometers from the Kremlin. According to reporting from Euronews and confirmed by Moscow Mayor Sobyanin, visible damage was sustained on the upper floors of the building. Sobyanin claimed no casualties. Videos circulating on social media showed debris hanging from the building's upper structure. This was not a symbolic near miss on the outer periphery of Moscow's defense perimeter. It was a strike on an expensive residential building in the heart of one of the world's most heavily air-defended cities. 3 days later, on the night of May 7th, Mayor Sobyanin confirmed on Telegram that 30 or more drones had been intercepted on approach to Moscow in a single overnight period. Temporary flight restrictions were imposed at Vnukovo and Domodedovo airports. Residents in multiple Moscow districts reported hearing explosions. On the night of May 8th, with the parade scheduled for the following morning, Ukraine launched what Sobyanin described as dozens of drones targeting the capital. 26 were reported downed over the city before dawn. Temporary flight restrictions at multiple airports were reimposed. This is the security environment inside which Russia's most symbolically important annual event is taking place. Now let us examine Russia's response to that environment, because the response is as revealing as the attacks themselves. According to a statement from Ukrainian Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky, Russia has deployed an additional 4 regiments, 24 battalions, and 162 air defense batteries specifically to counter Ukrainian strike drones around Moscow and the Krasnodar region. These are assets that did not simply materialize from nowhere. They were relocated, pulled from other parts of Russia's vast territory to concentrate around the capital. Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service confirmed what this reallocation means for the rest of the country. Russia has opened significant gaps in its air defense coverage across large swaths of its territory. The same refineries, ammunition depots, factories, and logistics hubs that Ukraine has been striking throughout this campaign, in Perm, in Yaroslavl, in Cheboksary, in Rostov, in the North Caucasus, are now less protected than at any point since the full-scale invasion began. Ukraine publicly acknowledged this, not as a warning, but as a statement of intent. Zelensky himself told the world on May 6th that the fate of Russia's Victory Day parade depends on Ukraine's army. Ukrainian sources began publicly discussing the gaps in Russian air defense coverage, not to give away tactical intelligence, but as a deliberate act of psychological warfare. The message was clear. Russia has been forced into a dilemma from which there is no good exit. Move the air defenses to Moscow, and the rest of the country is exposed. Leave them where they are, and the parade faces genuine risk. As the experts at Al Jazeera and CNN both noted this week, this is not the kind of dilemma that a country in a position of strength faces. Let us now examine the parade itself, because what Russia has chosen to include, and more importantly, what it has chosen to remove, is one of the most politically significant decisions the Kremlin has made in years. For generations, the centerpiece of the Victory Day parade has been its military hardware. Dozens of tanks rolling through Red Square, armored fighting vehicles in formation, nuclear-capable ballistic missile carriers, the kind that carry warheads and are counted in arms control treaties, lumbering past the Kremlin in a deliberate show of force. This imagery was not incidental to the parade. It was the entire point. The parade was a weapons demonstration, broadcast to the world, designed to communicate one thing above all others. Russia's military power is intact, is growing, and is not to be underestimated. In 2026, all of that hardware is absent. The Kremlin's official position is that the decision is logistical. Russia's defense ministry stated that the parade will feature columns of servicemen from military educational institutions representing various branches of the armed forces, along with an aerial component. No armored vehicles, no missile carriers, no tanks. There are two ways to interpret this decision, and as Sam Green, professor of Russian politics at King's College London, told CNN directly, neither of them serves Putin's interests. The first interpretation is operational. Russia has lost so much armored equipment, over 10,000 vehicles, including more than 3,000 tanks, according to U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency estimates, that it genuinely cannot spare the hardware for a parade display. The second interpretation is strategic. Russia does not want to bring expensive, symbolically important military hardware to an open public space in Moscow when Ukraine has just demonstrated it can strike targets 6 kilometers from the Kremlin with drones that penetrate Moscow's air defenses. Both interpretations lead to the same conclusion. As Professor Green told CNN, Putin likes to look in control and wants the Russian state to look strong. And that is not the message this sends. It sends a message he wouldn't usually want to send. It is the message of a power that is managing its decline, not projecting its strength. Now let us examine the ceasefire proposal, because it is one of the most strategically revealing episodes of the entire lead-up to this parade. Russia proposed a unilateral cessation of hostilities to cover the period of the Victory Day parade. The framing was simple: a temporary pause in the fighting while Russia commemorates its World War II victory. Trump endorsed the idea following a phone call with Putin. Zelensky's response was precise. He said, "If you genuinely want a ceasefire, start it on May 6th, not May 9th. Let us see if your offer is real, or if it is only convenient when the cameras are on Red Square." Russia's answer was to launch a wave of missile and drone attacks that killed 26 Ukrainian civilians and injured 118 on May 6th alone, the deadliest single day of civilian casualties in weeks. Russia then declared that Ukraine had violated the ceasefire, referring to Ukraine's refusal to observe a unilateral pause that Russia itself had immediately broken by bombing Ukrainian civilians. The analytical point here goes beyond the hypocrisy of the specific ceasefire claim. What the episode reveals is the internal logic of Kremlin information management. Russia's domestic media has spent 4 years telling the Russian population that Ukraine is losing, that Russia is winning, and that the war will soon be over. Within that narrative framework, Russia's Victory Day parade is supposed to be a celebration of inevitable victory. The removal of military hardware, the banning of foreign journalists, the mobile internet shutdowns, the relocation of air defense systems in open panic, none of this is compatible with the narrative of a winning power. So Russia needed a way to reframe any potential Ukrainian attack on the parade as something other than a legitimate act of war by a country defending itself against a 4-year invasion. The unilateral ceasefire declaration, issued without Ukrainian consent, immediately broken by Russia, and then retroactively cited as a Ukrainian violation, provides exactly that reframing. If Ukraine strikes anything in or around Moscow on May 9th, Russia can present it not as a military operation, but as an act of special terrorism by a country that violated a ceasefire. The construction of that narrative, the political architecture of how a potential humiliation would be managed, was built in advance. That is not the behavior of a confident state preparing to celebrate victory. It is the behavior of a government planning for the possibility of public defeat. There is a dimension to all of this that connects directly to the broader structural picture we have been tracking on this channel. The Victory Day Parade has always functioned as a political instrument of domestic legitimacy. It is not primarily for international audiences, it is for Russian citizens. The message every year is, we are strong, we are safe, we are led by a man who has kept us powerful and kept us winning. The imagery of tanks on Red Square reinforces the social contract that Putin has maintained for 25 years. Deliver strength and keep the loyalty of the people. That social contract is now under pressure from multiple directions simultaneously. Russia's economy is stagnating. Military and security spending now accounts for 38% of the federal budget, a share not seen since the Soviet Cold War era. The National Wealth Fund has declined 60% since February 2022. Russia's state pollster has recorded Putin's approval falling 15 percentage points in a single year. A Russian official told the Washington Post anonymously, "We can't even take one region." Former pro-Kremlin propagandists, people who built their public identities on support for Putin and the war, are beginning to openly criticize both, and they are not being arrested. That absence of consequence is itself a signal that the enforcement mechanism of Kremlin political control is losing its grip. The Victory Day Parade is being held inside this environment, a parade without tanks, without foreign journalists, with mobile internet shut down across 2 of Russia's largest cities, with dozens of Ukrainian drones being intercepted over the capital in the 48 hours before the event. With the president's own location a subject of speculation and military security planning. This is not a celebration of strength. It is an attempt to manage the optics of weakness, and it is happening in front of an audience of tens of millions of Russian citizens who can see, even through the propaganda, that something has changed. Let us look at what Ukraine's behavior in these days reveals about how far this conflict has come. Throughout most of this war, Ukraine's strategic approach has been consistent with standard military doctrine. Do not tell your enemy you are coming before you come. Do not reveal your capabilities before you use them. Strike without warning. The Prigozhin moment, when Russia's own mercenary leader marched toward Moscow, caught the Kremlin entirely off guard. Operation Spiderweb, Ukraine's mass drone attack on Russian airfields deep inside Russian territory, was a complete surprise. Ukraine said nothing, then it struck. The approach Ukraine is taking toward the Victory Day Parade is the opposite. Ukraine is announcing its awareness of the gaps in Russian air defense. Zelensky is making public statements about the parade's fate depending on the Ukrainian army. Ukrainian intelligence sources are publicly discussing Russia's air defense reallocation. This is not a tactical mistake. This is a deliberate strategy, and it works precisely because Russia cannot respond to it. Ukraine is telling Russia, we see the holes, and there is nothing you can do about them without creating new holes elsewhere. The dilemma is real, and it is permanent. Every resource Russia concentrates around Moscow is a resource that cannot protect something else. And Russia does not have the unlimited resources necessary to defend everything simultaneously. The result is what we see this week. Russia forced into panic-driven decisions, relocating assets in open view of Ukrainian intelligence, stripping coverage from large portions of its territory, and holding a Victory Day parade that by its very composition communicates the opposite of what it was designed to communicate. Here is the strategic picture that Global Faultlines is here to provide. The Victory Day Parade of 2026 is not simply a diminished spectacle. It is a data point, a documented, verifiable moment in which the gap between the narrative Russia tells about itself and the reality of its strategic position became publicly, visibly, and irreversibly apparent. No tanks, no missiles, no international press, mobile internet shut down, air defenses relocated from the rest of the country in visible panic. A drone striking a luxury apartment building 6 kilometers from the Kremlin 4 days before the event. 26 drones intercepted over the city the night before. And a president whose location on the one day everyone knows where he should be is itself a subject of security concern, for what might come from outside and for what might come from within. Russia entered this war claiming it would last 10 days. It is now in its 5th year, and its most important national celebration, the annual proof of Russian greatness, has been stripped of its military hardware, its foreign audience, and its connection to the internet, because the country that started this war can no longer guarantee the safety of its own capital city. That is not the situation of a country that is winning, and the parade, however it proceeds on May 9th, cannot hide it. This is Global Faultlines. We track the forces shaping the world, not just the events on the surface, but the structural realities beneath them. If today's analysis gave you a clearer picture, share it, subscribe, come back, because the fault lines are still moving. This is Global Faultlines. See beyond the headlines.